joy is revolutionary. Or why writing black doesn't equal trauma or pain. As a writer, do you need to pick a side? Do you either write the radical revolutionary type of love story, or do you write sweet, wholesome, hometown stories, or inspirational stories, or stories about finding love and helping the community? As a writer, what is your role? Are you responsible for documenting the injustices that you see? Are you responsible for recording the problems and the difficulties of growing up in an inner city? Or can you write stories about aspiring doctors and lawyers? Can you write stories of accomplishment, of achievement? As a writer, as an African American writer, as a Black writer, what is your role? What is your responsibility? Hello. This is Elizabeth Griffin, the Black Romance Writer, and welcome back to my channel. As many of you know, NaNoWriMo is fast approaching, and that is National Novel Writing Month. And that will begin November the 1st, and it will end November the 30th. And while preparing for this wonderful writing adventure, I have been looking at the NaNoWriMo blog, and I came across an online article or blog by a woman named Kimberlyn Reed. And I found what she had to say quite interesting, and I'd like to share it with you. It's important to talk about what kinds of stories get represented in mainstream media. Nano participant Kimberlyn Reed tells us why stories centered around Black joy are necessary. As a little Black girl who loved reading, it always saddened me that there was never a Babysitter's Club or Sweet Valley High series in which Black kids were centered, not sidekicks or best friends lacking a backstory, just having fun, going through typical teenage stuff and hanging out with cool kids. The fantasy genre, as much as I loved it, also seemed to have no place for Black people to have the amazing adventures in faraway worlds. That's why, as a middle-aged blurred, I have been on an absolute roll with so many wonderful stories about Black people just existing, and I think there is need to be more of them. Kimberlyn Reed goes on to say, there is room for Black joy in a society that devalues Blackness as a whole, while co-opting and or misappropriating the aspects it finds marketable. This isn't to say there is no need for stories centered around the very real issues of social injustice. End of quote. As I read Kimberlyn's blog, I was immediately thrust back in time to when I was a teenager, and I remembered wanting to read stories about Black girls like myself, but not being able to find those type of stories. So I understand her passion and her drive in encouraging people to write stories about Black people, about Black joy, about Black love. And I would even go further to say multicultural stories, because I believe it is important for all teenagers to see themselves in fiction, to see themselves in literature, and to be able to identify with those characters. Because, believe it or not, these characters will serve as role models. These characters in these books will encourage the readers to dream and to hope and to wish and to believe in things that are outside of their environment. These books will expose the reader to new adventures, to new ways of living and thinking. And at the end of all that, they will get a wonderful, entertaining story that may last a lifetime, that they may carry on in their hearts and treasure for years to come. I began my writing career in the young adult fiction category, And my first book ever published, self-published by me, was entitled Naira. And this book did very well in the early 1990s. I also followed up that book with a book called Don't. And that book also has good reviews on Amazon. Not to mention my birthday series, which is a collection of books that feature a girl of a different ethnic background on each cover. So 13 is a white girl, 14 is a black girl, 15 is a Latina, 16 is an Asian young lady, Vietnamese. And the reason that I created the birthday series is because I wanted a collection of books where when you got them all, you will see different girls from different backgrounds telling their story of what happened on their birthday, after their birthday, or the day before their birthday. So I agree with Kimberly Reed that it is very important for young people to have books that they can read and relate to. As a Black romance writer, I have been in spaces where readers of romance novels have expressed their feelings about being tired of reading trauma love, struggle love. These readers were not willing to purchase another book that depicted a Black woman in a difficult situation, trying to overcome odds that just seemed impossible. And at the end of the story, the Black heroine never really truly got her happily ever after. And I can understand the views and the feelings of these readers, and obviously these type of books are not for them. But I am happy to say that other books exist. Other joyful books exist. What about Beverly Jenkins or Brenda Jackson? There are so many writers out here, both indie and traditionally published, that are writing love stories, that are writing Black love stories. And I'm sure that if you do the research and if you take the time, you can find those authors who write the type of books, the type of fiction that you want to read. I do understand the complaint, however, that there is a lot of trauma love out here. But I also understand that this type of writing is popular among some people. I, for one, love, and let me repeat, I love reading Donald Gowan's stories. And let me tell you, there is no more struggle love than in his books. There is no more trauma than what you can find in his books. But yet, there was always a lesson to be learned at the end. And I do believe that a lot of these trauma stories do have a lesson in them, do have a moral to the story. Some of these writers are telling cautionary tales. They are showing you a world that exists in which life isn't fair, life isn't just, but you still have to go on living. And I appreciate some of these stories. We are living in a wonderful time in which anyone, and I do mean anyone, who has a story that they want to tell, they can write it and publish it. There are no limitations. If you don't want to read struggle love, and if you think that you have a story to tell that reflects joy and inspiration, and you want to give a happily ever after, then you can do that. And you can put your book up there for people to choose. So, yes, struggle love has its place in literature, but also happily ever afters have their place. And it is up to you as the reader to discern which books you want to read. And if you should choose to write it, then welcome to the club of authors and writers. We gladly accept you. In closing, I agree with Kimberly Reed. There is a need for stories that are uplifting, that show joy and inspiration. And there are a lot of young people out there who are waiting to read about characters who look like them, who go through all types of adventures, whether it is fantasy, romance, science fiction.